So you can ask questions to the panel in general, or you can ask to a specific individual. Just feel free. I will try moderating the discussion, and I'd like to, for the panelists, to just introduce themselves, say who they are, and 30 seconds on background of what they're doing, and etc. So could I start with Andy?
Andy.
Hi, Andy Manson's my name. I've worked solo as a luthier. Over the years, I've used all the usual traditional woods. Currently, I'm trying to use, as near as possible, exclusively European tone woods. I have still some tropical woods, which obviously I'm not going to waste. I'll use those. My kind of feeling for the European woods really goes back a long way. When I started over 40 years ago, I got very interested in early instruments and lutes specifically, and Baroque guitars for 2 or 3 years. And I spent a lot of time studying in the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, in the library there, and became aware of all the woods people used to use back in those days. Before, I think it was earlier mentioned, the discovery of woods in South America and places like that. So fruit woods and so on, and that's my interest now.
Thank you.
I'm Adrian Lucas. I'm a guitar maker as well as a teacher at Newark School, which is involved in the Leonardo project. In my own work, I'm very much interested in European woods as well as using reclaimed woods. So I use a lot of old mahogany and Douglas fir as reclaimed woods. Through the project, I'm getting more and more interested in just using more local European non-tropical woods, and also promoting that with the school and with the students as part of the project. So it's good to be have a foot in both camps.
I'm Jacky Walraet. I'm also, like Adrian, a teacher in an instrument building school in the Center for Musical Instrument Building in Belgium. And I'm, since the beginning, a part of the research team from this project. Thank you.
I'm Jean-Yves Alquier from France, and I start to think about ethic in guitar making, and I use European wood for electric guitar since 2 years with Maurice Dupont in France for my electric model. And now I present in Berlin my work about ethic and eco-responsibility, and I built a complete series of guitar, acoustic, electric, bass, jazz in 100% bamboo. Because I focus on CO2 neutral for wood, and it's my work actually.
My name is Jutta Molter. I'm from Austria. I work in the Federal Ministry of Environment, and the main topic of my work is CITES, and we try to get through all those regulations, and especially the European Union regulations on the wildlife trade.
I'm Fred Pons. I run Kopo guitar for now 28 years. And I've been through many different materials, and for instance, carbon fiber for years and years. And now, and for the last 5 years, I didn't sort of step by to wood. Of course, I always use wood, but also for very, very local woods. I wanted to stop using some non-tropical woods, and especially with acoustic instruments. I mean, I did it before with electric instruments, so I developed a series of acoustic guitars with ash, with a wood which I call sorbus. In French it's called cormier, and also of course like my friends with walnut and with maple. And I try very hardly to convince guitarists that it sounds at least as well as some non-tropical woods, and it works.
Hello, I'm Chris Larkin. I live in Ireland. I've been making guitars for 38 years. I'm completely untrained, so I don't know anything. And I'm a complete guitar making whore. If you pay me, I'll use any wood. But this is because I have to eat. But my preference for many, many years, probably 30 years, is to use local woods. And the majority of my guitars have been made with local woods, and particularly local Irish woods, which are very hard to source. But you may have seen before, if you were here, 2 of the 3 suppliers up there were my suppliers in Ireland. I very much believe in this. I very much believe in the whole thing. I also, like Andy, have stocks of tropical woods that I've had for years and years. I have woods that I know are over 100 years old, and after the talk we had earlier, I can't do anything about the provenance of them, and if I get a chance to use them, somebody wants to use them, I will use them. But well, my colleague here, I'm trying to convince people to use non-tropical woods, and particularly Irish woods.
Okay, thank you, panel. So it's open to you. Just feel free. Ask any questions of the panel.
Wow.
Yeah, intimidating.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
So when you go ahead to build a guitar, what is your main impulse for the selection of the wood? Because when I look at a piece of wood, I imagine, well, this is so and so, and it is well grown, and so what is your first impression of the wood to choose it for building a guitar?
If I can start, I would say at least 3 criteria. One is density. One is density. The other one is elasticity, and the third one, of course, is the way it looks. That's my way. Probably I share it partly with my colleagues. And of course, like a very old, I don't know, it's because we have studied in the field of tropical woods. For a long time it was in comparison with tropical woods. Like, I give an instance, my sorbus wood is very dense. The density is almost 0.8. So when I speak with some customers, I always have this sort of obligation to compare it with the density of some more rosewood. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. Elasticity is much more technical. I won't develop. And of course the look, you know it.
And the sonority, because when I take a piece of wood, I hammer on it and I try to get a glimpse of what its character is like. So you don't test before you build it into a guitar. It's a sonority, because when I take a neck or a piece from the side of the guitar and I hammer on it and hold it like this, and I hear the sustain of it. So this, for me, it is most important how it sounds.
This is a result of density and elasticity.
Okay, this is your test of okay.
But also, we can test the acoustic result of a back made out of ash, for instance. But you can always modify it by the thickness. So this is our work. Okay, this is how we do our kitchen work. Okay? Does anyone? Yeah, Andy?
I find that I'm willing to try any piece of wood. I probably start, I can't help myself, but the visual, if I like the look of it, and then I'll not that I'll reject it if I don't like the look of it, but that'll draw me in. And then I find it's when you touch. As soon as you touch the wood, you start to hear it in all sorts of ways. You stroke it, you scratch it, smell it, taste it even sometimes. Just the whole physical experience.
Smell it, for sure.
Yeah, I measure nothing. I only use measurement in terms of distance measurements for measuring the string length and so on, but I don't measure stiffness as such. I'll flex it and measure it that way. That feels right, you know. And after a bit, you know, you make the more instruments you make, you gain an intuition, I think, just by experience. You know, you might like with soundboards, for example, which you could go through a whole pile of soundboards and pick out some, and there could be 30 soundboards cut from the same tree. You'll find that there are so many variations in stiffness and the way they sound to your touch. Yeah, so it's, and I think most luthiers I know are like this. They're not very scientific in terms of like measuring. You know, there are tools you can use to measure the hardness of something, like engineers use, and luthiers don't tend to work that way because wood it's such an organic thing. It's not, you know, you don't have standardization of wood like you do of metal or plastic. It's very much a feel intuition thing. I think you would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other? Do you have a comment on this, Chris, or do you want?
Yes, thanks. The other thing about this is that because I don't know anything, because I was never trained, I've learned by the seat of my pants, and I agree with absolutely everything Andy says. I don't measure anything. I'm drawn in by the wood, the way it looks. But then once you're working with the wood, you can find pieces of wood that you will change them by the way you're working. So the way you brace tops and backs will change the sound and surprise you about the way pieces of wood that may not look wonderful can sound. So there's so much more to it. There's an awful lot of intuition, and there's an awful lot of what you do that changes the wood. It's the wood, almost anything can make a guitar. I think Bob Taylor made a guitar out of a pallet that some rosewood had come on, and it sounded really good. So almost anything can sound good. It's what you do with it, and it's your skill to get the best out of that piece of wood. It's not the wood itself.
Good.
I think. But I don't know anything.
I think to add to that, I think there is no standard criteria of what is a good sound for a guitar. Every guitar, whatever you make it of, Macroferry plastic guitars, they have a sound. And so many musicians, professional musicians, internationally famous musicians, you find very often they use guitars that most people think they're guitar aficionados will pass by. Look at the guitars Raikuda uses, for example. I mean, you know, so each guitar has its voice and it has a place. And I recoil from these kind of this classification of guitars as to whether it's the best guitar or a great sounding guitar. Every guitar has a voice and has a usage. So
yeah, I mean, I would add to that. I think when you get to the level of a good guitar, it becomes then like flavors in food. There isn't one sound better than another. You can't compare an orange with a carrot and say an orange is better than a carrot, unless you're a donkey, maybe. But it is very much, and as you say, for each sound there is a customer. And in my experience, you can build a guitar, and one person can think it's a wonderful guitar, and another person is not moved by it at all. So it's a very personal thing.
Yeah.
Okay, and next question.
it's a very personal thing, and it can change, as we have seen in this test, from one moment to another.
Yeah.
That's it, we can go home.
Well, I had a question. I'll say it on behalf of Stefan, because I was talking to Stefan a week or so ago on the phone, and I know that you've got a Brazilian rosewood guitar, yeah? And I know that you travel around from country to country doing concerts and that, and so I target the question at Jutta. What does someone like Stefan now need to be aware of? Where can he get this information of what he needs to do with his guitar? Because I know you weren't really aware of this musical instrument certificate and what you need to do to get this through customs if you're going into the US or so to play. So what should someone like Stefan be aware of, Jutta?
Listen to the lecture of this morning.
Yeah, but many people haven't been in,
First
so
of
just
all,
top lines.
First of all, the best thing is to ask your management authority in your country, what do I have to do? And now in the European Union, we have the possibility to issue a musical instrument certificate. When you're on tour, on private tour, not commercial, you can get this. There are some requirements, but with this you can travel around 3 years. And you have each cross-border movement meant you have to, this is a continuation sheet, and this has to be stamped by the customs official. This is one possibility when you go on tour with your own guitar. When you want a commercial use, you need another permit, but this would be probably for you a good thing. But may I, I know I'm on the panel, but may I ask you what is the difference when you're working with tropical wood and local wood? Do you feel a difference when you work on this? When you're building a guitar, is it a different style of working or feeling or tasting?
I definitely feel very much, how can I put it, a spiritual difference.
An ethic difference.
And an ethical difference.
Yeah.
I mean, I long ago decided, maybe I'm wrong, but it seemed to me that the reason we use these tropical woods, Brazilian rosewood, it's back then, whenever it was they discovered the tropical forests, and so, for example, you've got a factory, you've got a company like in America like Gibson, say, and they're getting their factory going, and they're using the various woods that appear to be available, and then somebody comes back from the Amazon and says, hey, they've got this infinite supply of this wood that is so consistent and regular, we'll move over to that and we don't need to worry about choosing wood anymore, we know what we're getting, it's going to be a constant flow of this stuff. And I'm sure a lot of the woods that have become traditional in guitar building and the sound that people have got used to from these woods was created through convenience.
Sure.
And what I'm really interested in, I suppose, is to be able to use the indigenous woods of where I live, or certainly as close as possible to where I live, for the ethical reasons, the ecological reasons, the less wood miles, and like I say, the spiritual connection with where you are. I mean, it just makes sense from every point of view. And like as I was saying before, there's no criteria, there's no definition of the best sound for a guitar. I mean, I use cherry, yew, all sorts of walnut and woods like this grown in England or Europe, maple, and my customers are just very happy with them. That's all I can say. It's
yeah, I think. Can I?
Yeah, sorry.
So, as a sort of example of what Andy's talking about, the tradition of the flamenco guitar and the classical guitar. If you look where that comes from, in Spain, the flamenco guitar was made using the local cypress. Consequently, it was cheap. the exotic. When the Europeans began to import mahogany, ebony, rosewood for furniture making, it was more rare, so it was more expensive, so it was more desirable. So in Spain, the more expensive clients would buy the tropical wood guitars. The people who couldn't afford an expensive guitar like the gypsies would buy the cypress guitar. And then the cypress guitar becomes the sound of flamenco. The rosewood guitar becomes the sound of classical. And the style of guitar has come from the convenience and the usage of the wood, not the other way around.
Yeah.
Fender guitars are made from local woods that are cheap, or were cheap at the time, to the local area. The style kind of follows the convenience of how they were put together. It wasn't the other way around, which is often the way it is marketed. So,
Right. Violins. The violin was developed in Europe pretty much. And what are they made of? Spruce and maple. That's it. Well, you know, if you'd invented it in, I don't know, India or somewhere, you'd use Indian rosewood or Paducah or something. But you know, it's just how it is.
Yep.
yeah.
Anyone else want to comment on?
I think our job is simple, is to make the best guitars possible for musicians.
Yeah.
That's the
That's
base.
right. Yeah.
Keep on
That's
doing
the,
that.
That's the base since blood of years. But I think now we have a new mission, is to convince guitarists and other guitar makers to have morality, to have ethic. I think it's the new mission for our job. We can use local wood, Irish wood. Yes. We can use the wood near your shop. I don't have wood near my shop.
Anymore.
But now I think for the next generation, our mission is to convince guitarists and luthiers to have an ethic with wood. It's just that.
Jean, if I could ask you a question, because you've done a lot of this work now on the carbon neutral guitars. If a luthier in the audience was to want to make an assessment of the carbon footprint of his guitars, do you know if there are any models anywhere that could help him do that? Or, yeah?
Non, c'était pour vérifier si le footprint. Ah, l'empreinte carbone.
Il y a des modèles pour vérifier ça.
Oui, il y a des études. Il y a une université belge, je crois, qui
So it is the wrong microphone.
No,
French microphone.
That's the French.
It's a French microphone, yeah.
Take the English microphone, please.
Sorry, it's hard. There's some university and make some etude
Studies, yeah.
for CO2.
Okay. I'd be interested to get the contact if we could talk later on. I'd appreciate that. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I don't know if you know that, but Taylor bought the Ebony factory in Africa, and what they, for years and years, the ebony was logged, and every piece of ebony which wasn't completely black was scrapped. And so 1 out of 10 trees would actually be used as ebony. What Taylor did now is they said, okay, we can use all the ebony, and we accept all the ebony we get, and they actually make use of 99% of all the wood they cut. And they're making sure that African people themselves make a living out of it, and that the forest isn't going to be plundered. What do you think about in ethics and morale about such projects?
Well, it's obviously better than the... Clearly, well, just by what you've said, it's obviously better than it previously was, sure. I mean, if I don't see a problem in using tropical woods as a kind of, just as a criteria, no tropical woods, if if they're being farmed sustainably, and as you say, the local people are not being exploited and abused through the system, then I don't have a problem with that. What I still have a slight problem with is that I'd still rather use woods closer to home, because if they're perfectly good woods nearby, why create all that pollution by shipping the wood all the way here? In a way, if you want to use tropical woods, move to Honduras.
Thanks.
I think there's another thing about this too. In my opinion, ebony isn't very good wood. It cracks, it shrinks, it moves, it hates humidity changes. You make a lovely guitar and with lovely fingerboards and do a beautiful fretting job, and you send it to the desert in California and you try and play it and you come out with your hands bleeding because the fingerboard overnight has shrunk. So you always have to put binding. I've used ebony fingerboards. He's got some of them, and I have to bind them because it's the only way I can ensure that there's some sort of regularity in the way the frets fit. So I have nothing wrong with what Taylor's doing, but it wouldn't be my choice of fingerboard even if it was free. Really, there are much better woods. There are much better woods. So.
And I think the main reason it's in popular use is because it's black and nothing else.
Yeah.
And as we know, people like dark woods better than pale woods.
And you can be ethic with tropical wood too. You can have an ethic philosophy and use tropical wood, but it's going to be very straight now. In the 19th century, nobody cared about that, but now we have to take care about that. Ethic philosophy, it's global philosophy. We need to have eco-responsibility, a global eco-responsibility for the next generation. You can use ebony if you have this philosophy.
Well, the way I deal with that, all the mahogany that I use is recycled from furniture, and I have quite a large supply of it. And I don't know if it's true here, but certainly in the UK, a huge amount of good quality Honduras mahogany was imported over the last 100, 200 years. And a lot of it is being discarded, burnt, thrown into a skip, and it's available. It's probably not sustainable or viable for a large company, but for individuals, it's not difficult to acquire good quality reused mahogany. And I also like the idea of a guitar where I can tell a story. This piece of wood was the top of my bed. This was the door in my house. I don't have any doors left in my house. The house where I live is part of the houses where I live were built in the 1930s, and all the timber in the house was Douglas fir. And from a few from my own house, some from neighbours, I have a collection of about 10 Douglas fir doors. This is about as local as the wood can get. And it's really good for bracing, and it makes good soundboards. Soundboards is always a tricky one with reclaimed woods.
Do your neighbors know that you're using their doors?
Yeah. I invite them round to look at them sometimes.
Okay, Fred.
I have two little different stories. These kind of stories. My Cormier, my Sorbus, I got it about 15 years ago from a very, very local supplier 2 kilometers far from my shop. And the two benches that I got, which I still have, because I make about 10 guitars per year, his father cut the tree, and at that time he cut the tree to make some planers, planes, tools, just tools. So nobody makes any tools with wood now. We have very good steel, and so it's good to reuse also this local wood. And the second story is a story about ebony. I have a stock of Macassar fingerboards, which we bought, Ken Barker and I, 5 years ago. It was an ancient Gibson stock that they didn't want to move to Nashville. So it stayed in Kalamazoo, and we could buy about 500 fingerboards. So why not using them? I mean, they are there. I just bring a few of them each time I go there, so I don't have to ship them. I just bring them in my luggage. So two kinds of stories, and those two woods are really great. But I really, as you said, prefer making a guitar with a Sorbus Cormier fingerboard because it's really 10 times more stable, for sure.
I've got a guitar which I've got here, which you can see on my stand, which is entirely built of European woods. Apart, I had to give in with the bridge pins. There wasn't time to find. I've used some Ebony bridge pins. The fingerboard and the bridge I've made from Hawthorn. I don't know what that is in German or French. Hawthorn. Anybody know that? It's not a big tree. It's a small tree. It has small red berries. Little red berries.
Meadow in Flemish.
Okay.
Oh, I know them.
This tree grew in our garden when we lived in Devon. In fact, it was a rather beautiful tree. Underneath it was a complete carpet of wild strawberries. And our little daughter Daisy used to sit in the middle of these strawberries and feast on them when she was tiny. Anyway, the tree died. We cut it down, and I've saved wood from that. And I finally started using this. Is how's Daisy? So this must be. It's probably about 23 years old, and I've made the fingerboard from this Hawthorn and the bridge, and that wood is so dense, so hard. The one drawback is it's pale. It's not as pale as maple. I don't believe it's going to get dirty like maple gets. I've put an oil finish on it, but it hardly took any oil. It's so dense. It's rather like olive wood, actually, and that's another thing. And now I live in Portugal. When we buy logs for the fire, I always go through the log pile, and I'm always fishing out bits of olive root. Is amazing you just get beautiful kind of marbled figuring in it. There's no strength in it, but for things like head veneers and decorative like round sound holes, absolutely beautiful. We pruned an orange tree 2 or 3 years ago. I cut some lengths out of that for binding. I used it green, straight off the tree. I figured, well, it's so small, I'm going to bend it with a hot iron. It's going to be, that's going to pretty well deal with the problems in that respect. And it's fine. It's really nice wood for binding. So I'm always looking. Whenever I see wood lying around in any form or other, I'm looking. Oh, what's that?
Okay.
My first guitar I built in my father's garage. I didn't know anything about guitar making. I just found bits of wood in the garage. The back and the sides, the back and the top were oak, old draw bottoms. The sides were plywood. The neck, I think, was teak. I was in a car crash with it, and the front got smashed in. I found in a skip a piece of plywood, just about big enough, and it had rather a pretty veneer on it. I thought, oh, that'll do. I'll put that on. I put that on. Amazing. Lo and behold, it sounded different. Epiphany.
Okay, we're really running out of time. If we've got one quick question, we can take it. Otherwise, we'll have to ask the questions when we're milling around outside having a coffee or something. Anything quick?
I have a last question maybe for Stefan. Stefan, you played these 4 instruments that we showed to the people for a while at backstage this afternoon. So what's your impression of these 4 guitars, because there was 1 tropical and 3 non-tropicals. Can you tell us something about that?
Well, as a musician, I respect the guitar makers that make the character into the instrument. And when I touch an instrument, for me it doesn't matter if it's made of tropical or non-tropical woods, because it is the guitar builder that makes a character to the guitar. And for me as a musician, it is the job to make the best sound of the instrument. And so when I touch an instrument and when I play it, I try to get its character, to see if it fits to my character or to the things that I'm going to play. And this is the main thing, what I do when I see a new guitar that I haven't seen before. And so all these guitars were fine made, and they have different materials and they react differently. The string action was, even though it was the Dario strings on it, has a different feeling. Every guitar has a different elasticity in the strings, and this is really amazing that but it is always different to have a guitar in your hands when it's built by somebody else. It's always a different thing. It sounds different, and it looks different, it smells different, it feels different. But the main thing that I think when you choose a guitar to have it in your home, then is a guitar has to talk to you. This is what I'm experienced when I picked and chose guitars to be mine. I felt that they have to, when you play on it, it becomes a conversation with you. There's a dialogue between you and the instrument, and then it gets interesting. And I think the more it comes to talking to each other, the better you and the instrument fit together. And the one thing, one little story, I bring some of my Spanish guitars to a Berlin guitar builder, Dennis Tolz is his name, and he made the shellac, because it was worn. I played them for 7 years, and there was no shellac on them anymore. And he had a Blanca, a Spanish guitar, Sanchez Hernandez model, and he said, well, I built this because a friend of mine presented me the wood. He gave it to me. He said, hey, Dennis, build a guitar with it. And I was the first person who touched this guitar. And when I played it, it sounds like sleeping something. It was very awful. But I looked at the wood and I said, it's pretty wood, it's nice, it's lovely. And it smells wonderful because it was cypress. And then I played it. And after 10 minutes, it was double as loud as before, and it has this Spanish action that you need to play flamenco. And I continued playing it and using it and playing it in, and it started really to open up, and it was like he was like this. He was really astonished himself. So when you play guitar, try to get the best out of it as you can, because sometimes it's really worth it. And now I'm playing this guitar almost every day, because it has the really Spanish action, the sound that you have when you listen to recordings of Paco Lucia. It has this this cannot be described when you don't play flamenco. You cannot say how is the sound, but it's very percussive, has a good sustain, and so on. And to come back to your guitars, it's when you have a guitar in your hands, try to take it personal.
Yeah.
That you have a personal relationship with you and the guitar. Then I think you will have much more fun playing and enjoying what you're doing, because you give the guitar a chance to sound. Because this guitar, what I was talking of, was really sounding awful when I said awful, but now it sounds completely wonderful. And so this is something that you have like with people. It's like A friend of mine is writing a book now about.
Stefan,
yes, I know.
Calls from
Okay. Well, thank you.
Okay. Thank you everybody for coming. I'd like to thank the panel. It's been a great panel. Thank you very much. I hope you've all enjoyed the afternoon session. Thank you.